So if you're sat in front of a potential employer as a new mortgage broker and you want to know what questions to ask them, this is what this is, because good questions can be the difference between you getting the role and not getting the role. And so knowing the questions to ask that make you look smart, intelligent, and also the ability for you to look like you could be good for the role is crucial. So I've wrote down the 5 questions that I think you should ask. Now, they're in no particular order, but these 5 questions, in my opinion, should be asked at any mortgage broker interview you do, whether employed or self-employed or whatever it may be. That's how it should be done. So let's dive into the first one. The first one we have is, what is the long-term goals of the company? So you'd want to understand what the long-term goals of the company is, and that's a good question to ask. Most people, especially, it doesn't matter what they are, large corporate company, small independent, doesn't really matter. You're giving the person who's interviewing you the chance to explain the vision, the goal, where they're going, the direction. And that means that you can allow them to explain it and sell it to you. This is a really, really good one to open with in general. Obviously, you're going to ask you most of the questions, but when they ask you questions, these are the ones to do. This is very, very good. It allows them to effectively, especially if they're an independent company, sell their dreams to you. Because a lot of the time, they're just dreams. They're not real. They've got these goals of where they want to go, but it allows you to also pick out where you potentially, your skills could fit in to be able to get them to that said goal. The next question is, what are they looking for in an ideal employee? So I like this one because it allows them to flip on its head after you've done the interview, because normally they're going to ask you if you've got any questions for them at the end of the interview. This is something that's good to gauge yourself against what they've said. So if they say, well, what are you looking for specifically in an employee? What is it that you're after? That can really help, because it allows them to start to think about it. Because a lot of the time, by the way, these people who are interviewing haven't really thought about it. And this is something that you'll learn. And I spoke about this in a previous video. You're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And most people who are interviewing you are just everyday normal people going through the job, and they have not yet really understood what it is they're after. A lot of them are like, I just need a role to be filled. Now, they'll tell you they have all these things, but they haven't thought about it in depth. So when you're not challenging them, but prompting them to think about it, it allows them to start to really go, actually, yeah, this is what I'm after. And if they haven't got something, or you've presented something good for them, they might start to talk about things you've done without realizing they're talking about the things you've done, which can be a great way to make you feel like and look like you're the ideal candidate. The third one you have with that is, how would you describe the culture of the firm? So culture of the firm is really important, very much so in these large corporates. By the way, the corporates are normally going to sell you some BS about what they think it is, but it's still a good way to understand it. But how would you describe the culture is important. The culture, in my opinion, someone who answers this question well is going to be somebody who talks about it in a very different light. So they're going to be a lot more, it'll be a lot more unique. It'll be a lot more authentic. When you get stuff where it's like, we believe in working hard or striving to be the best, blah, blah, that's all the same kind of, wow kind of stuff. But it's not good. It's not the stuff that we want to hear. It's okay, but you're going to hear that at all your large corporate companies. But it shows somebody who's truly got their finger on the pulse if they can say, we're actually like this. And there's a few firms that spring to mind for me that are like that instantly have a very unique culture. And being able to get, if someone can articulate that culture very, very well, it instantly clicks. What I do, for example, when I talk about, if someone says to me, what's my culture is independent lifestyle businesses, teaching brokers how to have a life that is both profitable and also sustainable, living on their own terms. That's the kind of culture of how I live my life. My life is very much that, family first and everything. So when people speak to me about culture, I understand that, because that's mine. It'll resonate with some people, it will turn some people away. But if I was like, to strive to be the best, 1% better every single day, then instantly you're going to think, oh, here we go again, another cliche motivational nonsense, which is a really good telltale sign to figure that one out. Question number 4 we have then is, what would the training and development look like? So I think this is an important one to ask. We spoke about this in a previous video about these are like red flags to look for if they don't have training development. But asking the interviewer, the person who's actually looking at you and talking to you, what their training plans would be, gives them the chance to try and sell it to you and talk to you about it, because it's vital. And there's a lot of these companies, if they have a training plan, and they will happily tell you all about it, they'll be proud of it. If they don't, they'll bumble around. Well, you'll watch me, you'll get the opportunity to see somebody who's experienced. All of these things, by the way, are just red flags to effectively say, actually, you don't have a training program. So if someone says you get the opportunity to shadow someone who knows what they're doing, and you can do my admin and learn about how I do the job. All of these things, they're okay, but then effectively they're all just a version of, I don't actually have a clue. And I think that that's quite important to point out, because if you get that wrong, it can be very costly, because bad training and bad onboarding and training development programs at the beginning, when you have that kind of 2 years needed, that's pretty brutal, to be fair, and it's where it can all come crashing down. And the fifth question is, how are the leads sourced? And I think this connects very back to the training development. How are the leads sourced? What you're trying to do here is get across this point of where are they coming from? And you're not saying, there's a difference to will you provide me leads? You're asking that, how are the leads sourced? If they say, what do you mean on that? You can just dive down a bit deeper and just say, so are you providing leads? Are you expecting a level of self-generation? Are you expecting full self-generation? What are you looking for? And the reason why I say that is, instead of saying, hey, how many leads are you giving me? That which looks spoiled. When you're saying, how are they provided? How are leads sourced? Then that means that they're given the opportunity to say, well, actually 100% your own. And that's the thing for me, by the way, big red flag on that one. If you're in an employed position, but leads are 100% supplied by you, so 100% sourced, self-genned, not a good look, personally. Just because it means that realistically they probably don't have enough leads to provide you. You need, realistic for that anyway, leads being provided for you in an employed role. That's the benefit of being in an employed role. If not, self-employed, 50-50 on that one. Sometimes they're going to have leads provided, sometimes they won't. It's quite common to not, and that's completely fine. Don't expect people to provide you leads. But if you're going for an employed role, expect for leads to be provided. And if they're not, then I would ask, a follow-up question. If they say, oh, well, no, it's self-genned, I would be quite curious as to that. I'd be like, okay, that's interesting. So how did you come by that? Because that's quite unusual. That to me I think is important to say. And the reason being, by the way, is, and I'll tell you why that's important to stress that point when you're in this interview, is that if it is self-genned but employed, their salary or your salary is going to be their cost. And if you are not going to be able to be good at self-genning, which you're not going to be because you're new, you're not going to be good at that, then over time, that's very quickly going to be a redundancy waiting to happen massively. It's very obviously going to be that. So you've got to be very, very careful when these type of things crop up. And by the way, I've been in that situation. That's why I know that. I'd never do that again. Don't take an employed role without leads, ever. I never would have done that again, because it was a big mistake, a big, big mistake. So that's why you want to be doing that. Now, that's the questions you should be asking, but I've also done a video on the questions they're probably going to ask you and how you should be answering those. So check that on screen right now.